Good Thursday morning. Welcome to the Weather Desk here at 13 News Now and 13 News Now Plus. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. It's great to have you. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. Let's start with our headlines as we get ready to tackle today's top weather headlines. We do it each and every weekday morning. And you can bet we're going to talk a lot about this developing coastal low, the next winter storm for parts of the mid-Atlantic, and it could be a doozy. I will talk about the thinking on the forecast, what types of impacts we're going to expect from snow to wind, higher than normal tides, tidal flooding, also a very real possibility, a likelihood as we go through the weekend. Plenty to break down. We still have issues, especially nationally, but some here locally as well, from the last winter storm last weekend. So we're going to address some of those issues. You know, this deep cold, this very, very cold air mass that has settled in for so much of the eastern U.S., that is still creating issues in and of itself. Folks struggling to stay warm. Some folks have been without power. Other areas really freezing over, and there's just no quick relief coming. It's going to take a while before that cold air will eventually kind of scour out. It is here for now. We're also going to talk about the need to stay up on things with your car, specifically tire pressure. You want to make sure that your car is in peak form, and we'll talk a little bit about how that changes with all this cold air that we've been seeing and what we will see moving forward. All right, in addition, we have more information coming up on how the Carolinas and Virginia are really in the bullseye for this developing coastal low. This thing's going to swing off the southeast coast, throwing moisture back into very cold air. We are set up to have some of the most dramatic impacts, especially eastern North Carolina. We'll talk about what we know with the weekend storm and those things we don't. And there are still some questions. I know you're thinking, okay, we're 48 hours out. We should start to know. Yeah, we are starting to understand more and more. The model's starting to come into alignment. There's gaining confidence, increasing confidence that this is playing out as we've been talking about all week. But there are still some things that could go a little sideways. And I'm going to show you models that are saying, hey, look at this. I'm going to show you another one that says, well, look at that. So a lot to break down for you here in the next 25 to 30 minutes. Let's start off with a look at our weather impact alert. I've been talking about this since Monday. We actually declared the weather impact alert for the weekend. I believe it was Tuesday afternoon. But at any rate, we are there wanting folks to know Saturday into Sunday, we've got this developing winter system. Snow, likely, very likely that we see some significant snow in spots. We're going to see some stronger winds potentially at the coast and higher than normal tides, tidal flooding, also a big concern for early Sunday morning. You need to pay attention to the forecast as we will continue to modify it as the picture gets clearer and clearer. You will know exactly what's coming up. For now, I want to talk to you about the general thinking as this low ramps up off the coast. You can see these isobars packed really tight, meaning a strong northeast wind. You get that northeast fetch coming into the mouth of the bay, that can push some water in, and we get the water coming down to the lower part of the bay. That sets up our tidal concerns for Sunday morning. What we're looking at, this strong coastal low, all models pointing to its development. There's cold, dry air in place. You know it's out there. We've been talking about it and dealing with it for days. So there is the likelihood of significant snow for some folks. Gusty winds and high tides are likely with the potential flooding issues on Sunday. Take a look. The National Weather Service this morning went ahead and officially posted the winter storm watch for the weekend and this developing storm. This includes the eastern shore, the northern neck, the middle peninsula, the peninsula's south side, Hampton Roads, and all of northeast North Carolina. In fact, most of North Carolina. This is our entire 13 News Now viewing area. And then all of southern Virginia, all the way out to the west. You see the Tar Heel State, really almost Carolina blue in this map here. South Carolina, also the northern 2/3 of that state under the winter storm watch, and even a portion of northeast Georgia. That's to the east of Atlanta, but northeast Georgia under the winter storm watch as well. So what are we looking at? Well, some strong winds, especially at the Outer Banks. We're talking winds that could gust 50 to over 60 miles per hour in some spots. At least the model's projecting that. And if that low really ramps up and is close enough to the coast, we could see those types of wind gusts Saturday night into early Sunday at the Outer Banks. In addition, the potential for heavy snow. Now, I'm going to show you a snow prediction from the National Weather Service in Wakefield. And I'm going to give you some numbers here that they put out this morning. This was issued this morning at 7:45. Now, 13 News Now will post our own snow forecast, and we'll get really an official forecast out from our team later this afternoon. We're still going to get a little more information out. But when they issued the Winter Storm Watch, they went ahead and issued an official snow forecast based on what they think right now. These numbers can and may change. The Weather Service meteorologists do a great job out there. But you see, if you look at this map, it might be a little hard because it's a slightly different font. But they were going 9.9 inches in Norfolk, 8.5 in Franklin, 12.8 inches in Elizabeth City, and Windsor down in North Carolina in Bertie County there, 11.2 inches. So that heaviest snow down here around the Albemarle Sound, heavy snow across the south side. As you go farther north, the totals start to go down. Looking at a little bit more than 5 inches around Accomack, 5.6 at Williamsburg, up to Richmond, 3.5 at Tappahannock, 2.7. Now, you take a look at this. I'm going to show you some of the models, and the models are going lesser amounts. I would venture to say the forecasters out in Wakefield, and they can, speak for themselves, obviously, but when they issue this, I know we are all looking at the snow, to rain ratios. When you have, as a general rule of thumb, you'll hear 1 to 10. If we get an inch of rain expected and it falls as snow, you would then get 10 inches of snow for every inch of rain. In this setup, because it's so cold and dry, the ratios are probably going to be more like 15 to 1 or 18 to 1. So while the models are saying, hey, you might see 6 or 7 inches, I think they're taking into account that those ratios some of the models are putting out in general may be underdoing it, and that we could get a lighter, fluffier snow that adds up a little bit more. Again, their forecast can be found at weather.gov/AKQ, and they also are out there on Facebook and YouTube. Really love the men and women that help us out in Wakefield. They do a heck of a job. This is their early forecast. We'll share our 13 News Now weather team's forecast coming up. And I am going to give you some more modeling to take a look at during this show here. So stay with us. We'll break all of that down. I do want to talk to you about the cold weather that's in place. And again, I'll have the full breakout on this developing system for the weekend coming up. But let's talk about what is still out there. We have parts of the U.S. that are still dealing with impacts from the last Arctic blast, last weekend's winter storm. And that system, believe it or not, is to blame for at least 65 deaths nationwide. ABC's Sophie Flay has a look at the dangerously cold conditions still wreaking havoc across the country.
This morning, relentless winter weather wreaking havoc across the country. A heavy load of snow and ice causing the roof at this rodeo arena in Arkansas to come crashing down. Parts of 2 interstate highways in Mississippi forced to shut down as crews try to clear ice and stalled semi-trucks from the roads.
There's not a lot of passenger vehicles. I think a lot of people are heeding the call to, unless you have to be on the roadways, to stay off. We anticipate that these roads are likely to freeze over again.
Some drivers have been stuck in the pileup for hours, even days.
No movement. Truck almost ran out of fuel. I had to cut it off.
Utility companies are rushing to restore power to nearly 300,000 customers in the South. This lineman in Mississippi dangling from a helicopter, working to restore high-voltage transmission lines. In hard-hit Nashville, officials say some outages will last throughout the weekend. In Frisco, Texas, a community is mourning the death of 16-year-old Grace Brito, the second teen to die in a sledding accident that killed her best friend. The pair were on a sled being pulled by a car when they hit a tree. As response teams try to dig out from last weekend's storm, another storm is set to hit the East Coast this weekend.
We're getting more confident in the storm track and some snows in the Carolinas. More of a glancing blow I-95 corridor into the upcoming weekend. Still could be heavy snows parts of Long Island, maybe Cape Cod as well.
At least half a foot of snow could fall from Georgia to Virginia. Sophie Flay, ABC News, New York.
Again, at least 65 people have died as a result of this last storm system, and that includes one woman in North Carolina. That woman was hit by a car in Lexington, about 20 minutes south of Winston-Salem. According to the Lexington Police Department, the woman was walking on the sidewalk when the car skidded off the slick roadway and slid down an embankment. 2 people in the car were taken to the hospital for minor injuries, but sadly, the woman who was hit wasn't found until the next day when crews returned to tow the car away. Investigators are still talking to the district attorney about possible charges, but they say they don't believe anyone in the car realized a pedestrian had been hit. All right, back to Virginia here. Schools in Southampton County are still closed due to the last winter storm. Jordy Clark has a look at the conditions there this morning.
Good morning. Here in Cortland, Virginia, this is one of the many areas that are still being impacted by this past weekend storm. Many of the schools deciding to close in this area, and that's due to the lingering impacts, again, with the snow and the ice that is still here, causing dangerous conditions in some areas. And having my photographer showing you just a little bit of what many areas are seeing. We're seeing that frost, we're seeing that ice, especially on sidewalks where this isn't very safe to walk. And so they have to keep that in mind when it comes to, those school closures and making sure students are safe in the meantime. But we will continue to monitor any of those impacts throughout the area, as many areas also prepare for this weekend's coming winter weather conditions. But for now, in Cortland, Jordy Clark, 13 News Now.
Yeah, that ice hadn't been going anywhere. Some of those areas that saw more of it last weekend, even here in southeast and central Virginia. All right, take a look at the temperatures overnight, and you can see how chilly it's been this morning. Temperatures down into the teens. Wind chills have been down around 10 degrees or so for some areas off to the north. We do have a cold weather advisory until 10 a.m., so we're just about done with it. But the bottom line is it is very, very cold. And in Washington, D.C., officials are warning residents to bundle up in the coming days. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and other emergency officials held a weather briefing yesterday acknowledging that the district has been struggling to dig out of the snow. They also say this streak of freezing temperatures is one of the coldest on record.
The current forecast is for 10 days of projected temperatures where the high is at or below 32 degrees, frequently in the 20s, and our lows will get into the negatives, as low as -3 or 4 several days this week at the 7 o'clock hour a.m. This is going to be one of the top 5 longest running cold streaks on record, and that is a dangerous thing for our community.
In New York City, ferry services are still suspended due to the ice chunks in the Hudson River. As we take a look, New York City right now, 13 degrees. So we want you to check this out. That ice is making it hard for ferries to complete their routes. The pause on service went into effect on Tuesday, and it's likely to last for several days. Crews are monitoring conditions in the waterway and will resume operations once it's safe. In New Jersey, here's something you don't see very often. It's a beautiful look at a partially frozen waterfall along the Passaic River in Paterson. That waterfall is 77 feet high and 260 feet wide. Again, the days of freezing temperatures froze good sections of it out. And in Indiana, a tractor trailer flipped on an icy road. This happened on Interstate 465 in western Indianapolis yesterday morning. The crash shut down several lanes for hours. Troopers are now warning drivers if the pavement looks wet, it could actually be ice. All right, right now in Tennessee, the cold weather continues, and thousands of people in Nashville are still waiting for power to be restored from the last winter storm. Kelsey Gibbs shows us what homeowners are experiencing as they wait for their lights and heat to come back on.
I heard a tree branch crash. I saw sparks fly from the power line, and then our power went out.
For many across Middle Tennessee, the story repeats. Freezing rain and ice laying claim to power lines and poles, leaving tens of thousands without light or heat. As of Tuesday night, NES reported that around 110,000 homes were still powerless, and more than 280 poles were broken.
I'm hoping to talk to somebody over there in a little while. That's my hope.
Louis Eron bundled up quietly watching linemen battle the cold as they worked throughout his Bellevue neighborhood. At his house, his power line sits in the snow, disconnected from the transformer.
We were lucky enough to get our hands on a generator, and so we're warm, but we're being patient. You know, we're luckier than some other people.
Outside, an Army mobilizes. NES crews logging 14 to 16-hour shifts. More than 118,000 have power again. But for many, the wait stretches out like the cold.
We happened to catch one of the NES pickup trucks driving by and waved them down, and they were very honest and said, we would have never found this house if you didn't wave us down.
Thousands from West and North Nashville, Madison, Hendersonville, East Nashville, Brentwood, and Bellevue remain in the dark.
The way we prioritize the work that we're doing is to make sure we get the largest number of customers taken care of at a time. We're focusing on those circuits with 1,000 or 2,000 or more customers to be restored.
Brent Baker with NES says to meet the challenge, NES has called line workers from across the country and more than 700 strong.
We're up to 740 this morning, and we'll be at 925 this evening. Those are linemen that are working on our system, and another 207 vegetation crews who are making a way for those linemen to get where they need to go.
With each hour, the ice weighs down wires and trees. Neighbors wait, grateful for small comforts, steady in their faith that warmth and light will return soon.
Very appreciative.
Well, as you can see, again, that cold air is firmly entrenched over a good section of the country. And the cold air being in place, that's going to contribute to our chances for some significant snow as we look ahead to the weekend. We're going to take a short break, but coming up in just 2 minutes, how cold weather can impact your car. And we're going to have that deeper dive, a closer look at the weekend and the impending snowy forecast for Hampton Roads. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. You take a look here. We are under a cold weather advisory. We only have another 39 minutes or so left until that expires. But wind chills this morning have been down below 5 and 10 degrees for a few areas off to the north, especially along the eastern shore. Some other areas more like 10 to 15 degree feels like temperatures across the area. So it has been a dangerously cold morning. You look at the air temperatures right now, and we're still in the lower to mid 20s widespread, with temperatures in the mid to upper 20s around Edenton and Roanoke Rapids, down towards Manteo there at the Outer Banks. Virginia Beach at 25 degrees, 22 in Newport News. Now you factor in the winds. This is what it's feeling like. As I mentioned, up on the eastern shore, very cold. 5 degrees at Wallops, 9 at Melfa. That's the current wind chill. Newport News, Virginia Beach, both at 14. It feels like 15 in Hampton as we've had north winds, a little breezy out there. Elizabeth City, another one of those areas, feeling a little bit chillier. Now, as we take a look at the day, wind chills later this afternoon up into the mid-20s, but you get a feel for what's going on here. Despite the sunshine, it's going to stay cold today. And then tomorrow, increasing clouds. We're going to be in the upper 20s to near 30 Saturday and Sunday. This is when we get the wintry weather, the best chances for not only cold, but snow and very gusty winds, especially at the coast. As we get into early next week, we'll be in the upper 30s and then close to 41 by the middle of next week. The average high, though, 51. So we've got this very cold stretch of weather, and it really isn't going anywhere. Since this stretch of cold weather began, you may have noticed your tire pressure warning light turning on or you're there on your car's dashboard. I personally have noticed my gas mileage on my truck has gone down a little bit. It's not doing as well as it normally does. Meteorologist Taylor Stephenson explains why.
Now that we've entered the winter season, the typically cooler weather can cause some temporary car issues. One frequent issue is seemingly flat tires. Air is made up of tiny molecules that move faster when they're warm and slower when they're cold. When the temperatures drop, those molecules slow down and take up less space. As a result, there is less pressure pushing against the inside of your tire. For every 10-degree drop in temperature, the tire pressure can fall by 1 to 2 pounds per square inch. Here's what you can do if you experience this type of underinflated tire. Check your tire pressure routinely throughout your trip and throughout the winter season. Also, try not to overinflate your tire when pumping it with air. When you start driving, the friction between the road and the tire heats up the air inside the tire and can cause the tire's air to expand again. For 13 News Now, I'm meteorologist Taylor Stephenson.
All right, thanks so much, Taylor. And even beyond that 10-day outlook, when we look at 8 to 14 days, carrying us through the 12th of February, you can see more cold air, below average temperatures expected from the mid-Atlantic all the way up through the Northeast. It is going to be a chilly stretch over the next couple of weeks. Let's talk about the big picture here and get into where it's snowing right now. Some snow showers back across South Dakota into Nebraska, a little bit southern Iowa and northern and northeastern Missouri. We've got a little wet weather coming into the Pacific Northwest. It's much warmer in that part of the country. That cold air really socked in here. And with that cold air still in place and kind of additional Arctic air kind of oozing southward, we are set up again for the weekend and the potential for wintry weather here in the mid-Atlantic especially. So let's talk some more about this with the Futurecast. We'll put this on and take a look here, and you see some of the model's depiction of some of the wet weather offshore. Here comes that developing low right in here. This is a graph model. You can see as we get into early Saturday, some of the snow kind of starting to fill in there. Now, the graph is a little bit of an outlier. All right, I'm going to show you the Euro. I'm going to show you the GFS model. I'll show you the NAM. That's one of our higher res models. And then we're going to take a look at the graph. And I think you're going to see some big differences, and that's why we are still watching this very, very closely. You know, we're going to start putting out official snow total projections, but those may change. This is kind of a tough one. All right, what we're going to deal with, and the reason we declared the weather impact alert, we've got a coastal storm coming together. The duration mainly Saturday to Sunday. Some of the models tried to bring in maybe a little bit of light snow late Friday night, but certainly later Saturday into Sunday, snow is going to become likely. The impact, accumulating snow, heaviest at the coast and south, possible tidal flooding. I should really change that to likely tidal flooding. The forecast models now that deal with the coastal tide levels that take the winds and kind of start driving those tides, they are indicating at least moderate tidal flooding, if not major tidal flooding, late Saturday night into Sunday morning. And if we reach these higher wind gusts, it looks like it will be major flooding. It looks like gusts at the coast, especially at the Outer Banks, could be up 50 to 60 or even higher, some of those peak wind gusts. So it all depends on how strong that low gets and how close it is to the coast or how far offshore. There is a very real scenario where it won't be that bad, where it might be farther out, and maybe the low doesn't get quite as strong. But most of the guidance suggests all of this is in play, so we want folks to be mindful of it. When you look at the center for the Climate Prediction Center's hazard outlook for the upcoming weekend, you can see heavy snow will be possible for coastal areas. Won't be as great the farther north and west you go. The heaviest snow should be in this area here, again, from south side down through coastal sections of North Carolina, but there could be a little fluctuation, and you may see some of those snows extending a bit farther to the north. You can see a little bit back out to the west as well. Now, as we take a look at the model development, you'd see here we've got the American and the Euro, the GFS and the Euro both pretty tight, and both in this general area right now. You can see they're very similar, so we don't have as much divergence. They both kind of carry it out and move it out fairly quickly into the midday Sunday. Most of it should be exiting. So here you go. With the GFS, you see the snow coming in, and again, a period of prolonged snow into early Sunday, some of that heavier activity down there. The GFS has been trending a little lighter to the north, exiting by midday on Sunday. When we take a look at the Euro, some of that light snow may start a little earlier, maybe late Friday night, but it looks like most of it comes in later Saturday. And then again, that period of moderate to heavier snow, the heaviest snow down here in North Carolina, this too pulling it away during the day on Sunday. Still opportunity for the track to go farther to the east. That's kind of what the graph was signaling, so maybe a little less activity there, but the cold air is in place, and if it stays more on this track, it's going to produce even more snow. The truth is it's probably going to lie somewhere in between these two tracks as it accelerates out. So you take a look at the snow potential, 3 different models, the NAM, the GFS, and the Euro. You can see the GFS has come back down around 6 inches or so, 7.3 with the Euro, and the NAM at 7.1. Again, these may not be taking into the full account that drier air kind of creating a fluffier snow, which could bump the totals up. I wanted to show you the graph, not nearly as much. This is through Saturday evening into early Sunday. You see those heavier amounts down there, not as much here. This is the outlier, though. Most of the models, again, producing heavier snow, and the graph is probably a little bit off, but that just shows you how there is still some uncertainty. So we still don't know for absolute certain the exact track or the full extent of the impacts. That's why it's so important to keep checking back with 13 News Now for updates throughout the coming days. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.